Hello. So, welcome to the very long-awaited mask tutorial. So, in this tutorial, I will be teaching you how to make masks like these, mainly feline masks. This isn't, but we're going to be remaking this in this tutorial, but obviously you can make whatever mask you'd like with this tutorial. So yeah, I will be teaching you how to make a cat mask. Okay, so let's just get into the tutorial. I'll stop yapping and I hope you enjoy it. So these are the materials you're going to need. You'll want a base, a hot glue gun, hot glue sticks, some kind of fur, some cardboard, some mesh. This is fabric mesh, some elastic. They often come with the masks, so you should be able to get some quite easily. Some upholstery foam, some felt, and finally you'll need some acrylic paint or paint. You can use eyeshadow, just some kind of paint so you can paint your mask. And you're going to need some scissors. Let's start. So I first start by adjusting the eyes. I start from the inner corner and work my way out to whatever shape I'd like. I then normally do the same for the other eye, but I'm going to show you how to make a small eye. And you're going to start by getting some thin cardboard and tracing the eye shape onto the cardboard. You want to cut it out slightly bigger than the actual eye, but then you can just glue it straight on, like I'm showing here. Now we're going to need the hot glue, so we're going to warm it up like safely, nicely, and wait for that to work. Meanwhile, here's me cutting out the normal eye. I start from the inner corner and work my way out. For the other eye, it's a bit more difficult, so I start from the outer corner and work my way in. Normally often do a lot of tiny slips, and there you go. Now here's the rest of how to make the small eye. Again, I start from the inner corner out, and you're going to want to make it a lot bigger than it should be because the felt will fold over the edges. Here's me cutting out the small eye, basically the exact same as the big eye. Just be careful. Here's what we have now, and now I will show you how to adjust the muzzle. I always start off by marking the edges where I vaguely want the muzzle to be. This is another option if you do not have upholstery foam. You'll want to trace out a very vague shape of what you kind of want the muzzle to look like this, and then cut it out as shown here, and then you can put it over the top of the muzzle, and I'll just do this here to show you what it's like. Okay, here's me gluing it on. I always start from the middle and I work my way out, slowly gluing it on and spreading it kind of out a little bit, and then I trim it a little bit just to shape it a tiny bit more, and there you'll have it. Yeah. Here's what it looks like, but if you want, you can use upholstery foam, which is what I'm going to use for this, and I'm just going to cut out like a really small square like this, and then I'm going to cut it in half and use it for each side of the muzzle. Okay, here's how I glue each side on. I kind of just lay it down and make sure everything's flat on there, and I lay it down like shown here. This is what you should have left to shape. And here's me shaping everything. I'm so sorry the time-lapse is really glitchy, but you can vaguely see what I'm doing. I glued a little tiny bit in the middle and then continue to shape all of it. And it's going to take a long time and it's going to be really messy, so make sure you have a bin near you and keep checking different angles and everything to see and make the shape that you would like to make. If you cut off too much, I'd recommend just putting up on a small chunk that you've already cut off and then trimming it down again. Here's what I'm left with, but I did go back and add a few chunks to the side off camera. Now I'm going to work on the ears. I first mark off where I'm going to cut them off and leave quite a lot of space in the middle, down by the sides. Now that I have everything cut off, I'm going to trace around the ears. Make sure you have a little bit of space, like I'm showing here, between the gap where you're going to cut it off. And then we're going to draw it. Okay, now we are drawing the shape of the ear that we want, and you can do any kind of ear. This method works for all types of ears. Yeah, so we should be good. Once I've done that, I take off the mask and draw this little shape here, and then I go ahead and cut out the ear, but first I fold the cardboard in half so we can have a duplicate. Here's what we should be left over with, and we're going to take one of the ears and trace it onto the cardboard again, and now we're going to put the mask down, and we're kind of just going to make two like outer and inner parts for the ear, like I'm doing here. It's quite difficult to explain, I'm very sorry. And we add little tabs on these sides for gluing it on later. And it should look like this for the inner side, depending on what kind of ear you're doing. The fluffy parts at the bottom are optional. And then we're going to do a smaller one for the outer ear. Again, adding the little tabs on the side. Once you cut them out the same way I cut out the ears, you'll be left with this. These bits will be used to make the ear look more 3D and connect it to the mask. Now, before we cut off the ears, we're going to have to mark where the ears are going to sit on the mask. I often use the little lines where I'm going to cut off the ears, and I'll just trace around the ear in the position I want it on the head. Apologies for any background noise, but now the ears are cut off, you'll want to glue it where you've marked before onto the mask. Here I am just gluing everything on. Do not touch the hot glue like I'm doing here. Just don't. You'll see me doing it a lot, but please don't do it yourself. Now we've done that, we're going to soften up these bits of cardboard. It's very difficult to do with one hand, so here's another time lapse of me doing it. Really doesn't take very long. Make sure you kind of curve them inwards, and yeah. They then should be malleable, but before we stick them on, we're going to have to felt. Now with the felt, we're going to start with the ears. We're just going to put a whole load of hot glue on it and then stick it on. Here is another little time lapse of me doing the other ear. As you can see, I just stick it on like that. Now we should be left with this. You're going to want to make little slits in those bits that are left over, like I'm doing here. With the tip, this is what I do. And don't forget the little bit underneath the ear either. Once you've done that, you'll just want to glue all the little flaps over. If you need to trim off any excess, just do so after you've folded it down. You should then be done with the ears, but now we're going to have to felt these parts. Now, as you can see, these parts are very easy to felt. You're just gluing them straight onto the felt and then cutting around them, and then cutting the flaps again, and you've done all that. Once you've done that, you need to felt the whole mask now. But before we do that, you need to attach the elastic, and here's how I do it. I first pull it through the hole and then glue that flat down, and then I pull it through the hole, making sure the elastic is straight. And you'll want to measure, but I already know because of how many masks I've made. Now we're going to felt it, and you'll want to tip the mask upside down and start from the muzzle. And you'll glue along these bits first. Here is a time lapse of me felting the entire mask. As you're felting, you're going to want to pull the felt out and make sure everything is smooth to reduce wrinkles. Make sure you're pulling it out and making sure it's all flat. Then you'll cut off the excess and cut the little slits and glue it down just like any other mask. But you want to do the eyes too, same as we've done everything else. This is what you should be left with, and now we can glue on the little bits here. Here's me gluing all the little ear bits on. You want to take your time doing this, glue up any edges, make it look how you'd like. Now here is what you should be left with. Now we're going to want to put the mesh into the eyes. Here's how I make noses though. So I just put a blob of hot glue on this heat-proof mat. If you don't have a heat-proof mat, paper or baking paper works pretty well. Now it depends on what kind of animal you're making for the shape of the nose, but I'm making a Maine Coon, so I'm going to do a cat nose. Whilst we're waiting for that to dry, I'll add the eye mesh in. Again, this is the mesh I use, and you're just going to want to cut a small chunk out of it, like so, and then glue it on. Now here I just add glue everywhere and then plop the mesh right on, and I do pat it down with my fingers, but you don't need to do that, it is quite hot and you can burn yourself. Now you've done both eyes, you want to cut off the excess. I add a bit more glue to the back before cutting it off. Now the nose is dry, we can pick that up and trim it to shape. This is what I'm left with, and I'm just going to glue it right on. Now it's time for the fur. So you're going to want to get the end and measure from the base of the ear down to the muzzle. Here's a time lapse of me doing it for both sides, and remember we have to cut out 2 for each side of the same length, and then I'll show you how to glue them on. I also cut some fur for the ears, but it's optional, but I do love doing it and it makes the mask look really nice. Now for the ears I just glue it straight in, but I always make sure I glue down the edges properly and make sure it won't come off. Here it is when I've glued it on, and now we're going to glue on the sides, which is quite easy. We just glue from the base of the ear to the muzzle, like here, and then just stick it on. Like this here, this is what it should look like, but glue down the edges a bit more than I have done here, which I did in the end, and then we're going to glue all around in the shape and put the other one right on top. Also, I'm so sorry my finger's getting in the way here, but I hope you understand. Once you've done that, you can unplug the hot glue gun and leave it to cool down. Here's what we should have. Now we can begin painting. Yep. I always start off with mixing the colours. Here I'm making a ginger Maine Coon, so I'm just going to show you me mixing up all the colours, since I don't have any painting process recorded, since there's not much to say about it. I blend with my fingers sometimes, I blend it with a paintbrush, and I just make sure everything is covered completely in paint, and I make sure I have a lot of paint. I often use it all up, but I say take your time, this takes a long time, and make sure you're looking at a reference of the real animal or your design before you start painting and during painting. This is also why I didn't record the paint process, because I was listening to music and looking at the reference. So I recommend listening to music and having your reference next to you whilst you paint, and then just enjoy the process. Here is my finished mask. I am so happy with it, and I'm going to just brush out the faux fur on each side with the paint on it. And I use markers to colour the eyes before you ask, and I used it to add the scar. Well, that took ages for me to record, but the mask, and I really hope this tutorial helped you all out with your own masks. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, night, or whatever it is for you. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial again, and please consider subscribing. My goal is 50k by the end of this year. Yeah, bye!